Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und beruchmis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Vayeira, and it's also going to be in Mitzvah Shem in the middle of the week, Chof Cheshvan, the Yom Hiledis of the Rebbe Rashab. It's also going to be Yutes Cheshvan, is the Yortzeit of one of my Mashpiyim, the Melech Tzvibel. So what is the connection between all these things? But first, as recently, when the last year with the war is going on, we start with Stocker. So Gedel Stocker Shemakarev Segula, Mashiach should come now. We're going to start with a prayer, and this verse, which we're going to say today, is going to be connected to the theme that we're going to be speaking about today. And that's a pasuk from Tilim, Kapitel Kuf Lamed Vav, pasuk Daled. Liyei say niflois gedeles levadei, ki liyelam chazdei. To him who alone performs great wonders, for his kindness endures forever. So one of the explanations of the pasuk is lois gedeles levadei. He alone sometimes performs wonders that only he alone knows about. You don't even know about it. There could be 1,000 plots against the Jewish people by enemies of the Jewish people, and Hashem could perform these miracles that destroys their plots, and we don't even know about it. It happened behind the scenes. So we should always be aware that the Eibishter is looking after us and protecting us in ways that we don't even know about. And therefore, Kili Olam Chazdei, therefore his kindness endures forever, because as Chassidus explains, the different levels of godliness. There's Ein Sof, there's the level of light, but then there's Atzmus, the essence of Hashem. The greatest miracles are even miracles that we can never understand, that only He knows about. And it's Levadei, Hu Levadei, goes in the level of like the essence, the source of all sources. And therefore, Kila Olam Chazdei, those are the most eternal, that have no limits whatsoever, because they come from the highest level. And we'll take a lesson from that to us in how we deal with other people from today's Parsha. So we're in Parshas Vayeira, and as we spoke in recent weeks, we have to learn Maisa Ovesim Labonim. The conduct of our forefathers is a sign, and it's a role model, and they paved the way for us to learn from their ways how we're meant to conduct ourselves and lead our lives. So in this week's Parsha, there's a famous pasuk there, in the story where the angels come to Avram Avinu, and he doesn't really know that they're angels, and he does kindness for them, and afterwards Hashem notifies Avram that he's going to destroy Sodom because it's a terrible place, and then Avram prays for the people of Sodom. So what he says when he's praying for the people of Sodom, he says that he's entreating Hashem to forgive them, and he says the words "V'anoichi ofar ve'efer," and I am but dust and ashes. And Rashi says the pshat. What does it mean? That kvar ha'isi roi lis ofar al yidei hamolochem ve'efer al yidei nimrod lule rachamecha asher amdu li, etc. So you have to start up with a gratitude when you praise Hashem first. You first have to, when you turn to Hashem and you ask for a request, first you say that, it's not that I'm in gratitude. On the contrary, I realize that, I have to thank you and keep on thanking you for the fact that I'm still alive. And I do appreciate it. But nevertheless, please spare some other people, etc., as the Besukim speak about. So these words, Vanechi Ofer Ve'efer, so the Gemara learns out from here. What I'm going to speak today is primarily a Sicha from the Rebbe in Chelik Tezvav 15 of Likutei Sichos, Vayeira Beis. So the Gemara says, the Gemara in Soita, B'schar Shama Avram Avinu Vanechi Ofer Ve'efer, because Avram Avinu said, but I am dust and ashes, Zochu Bonov L'shtei Mitzvahs, his children were merited to have 2 commandments, Efer Pora, Efer Sora. The ashes of the Parah Aduma and the dust of the Soita. Because the mitzvah of Parah Aduma involves burning a cow, and we use the ashes mixed with water to purify the one who is impure with the worst degree of impurity. So we have ashes over there. And the dust of the Saita, when it is suspected adulteress, she has to drink from a formula with a mixed dust from the Beis HaMikdash, together with a parchment, which Hashem's name was written in, and put into water and dissolved Hashem's name, and she drank from this liquid. And if she was innocent, she was blessed in ways that she was never blessed before. So the simple pshat in the Gemara is because Avram said the words Ofer and Efer, and he was humble, so therefore the children merited 2 commandments that have Ofer and Efer, dust and ashes in them. And as a matter of fact, the Balaturim, he brings out a gematria, how Ofer, dust is a gematria to Saita. The Balaturim says, Mikan zochel efer pora v'afar Saita, Ofer begematria la Saita, with the sin, and v'efer begematria ba pora. So he shows how the gematrias, the numerical value of the letters, equal it. So we see a connection. But obviously, as the Rebbe asks in many places, there has to be a deeper connection. It has to be connected and a thematic, there has to be a theme, a concept that is inherently connecting between Avram Avinu's humility and, in this particular case over here, in how he prays for Sodom. And we're going to see how the theme that we'll see over here by humility, which is what Avram practiced when he prayed for Sodom, is connected to the theme and to the mitzvah of Para Aduma and the Saita, the drink that she has to drink. So in order to understand this, the Rebbe brings what it says in Chassidus, and we'll see how this is so relevant to what's going on today. Like we spoke many times, how Judaism is so amazing, how we see it's evident in a demonstrative manner how it's so relevant to the year 2024 Tafshin Pei. So the Rebbe explains that Avram represents Chesed. But there's the Jewish concept of Chesed and other sort of Chesed. And the Rebbe explains there's 2 types of Chesed, 2 types of kindness. There's a kindness that comes from an elitism, that in a condescending manner, so to speak. And then there's a kindness which comes out of humility. And it's based on Tanya, Igeres HaKodesh, Siman Beis, a famous letter that Alter Rebbe wrote. And over there he also brings the pasuk, V'zui b'chinas yamin shebekedusha. This is the right side of Kedusha. V'chesed la'Avram, she'omar v'anochi ofer ve'efer. The Alter Rebbe over there is talking about that a person who receives kindness from Hashem, it makes him more humble. The greater and the more he receives, and you could say in a certain sense that he's successful in life, and he sees Hashem's kindness and goodness bestowed upon him, the more he receives, the humbler he becomes. And that's the chesed of Avram and of Kedusha, of holiness. Sha'omar v'anochi ofer ve'efer. And then it says the contrast, and this is different than what it says concerning Yishmael, Masha Enkein, Bezelu Mazeh. The contrast is called Yishmael Chesed the Klippah, the kindness of the belongs to Klippah. That over there, Kol Shah Chesed Gadol, the more the person receives kindness, Hu Heilech v'Gadol b'Goyve v'Gasas Ruach v'Reichev Liboy. The more kindness shown to Yishmael and to his ilk, the more he grows in pride, arrogance, and self-satisfaction. So this is the 2 different levels of kindness. One level of kindness, let's talk about the kindness first of Klippah, is that you are on top of the world. You're king of the world. You're a billionaire. So therefore, you look at yourself and you say, you know what? I'll be kind. I'll be the knight in shining armor. I'll save the world. I'm so great and I'm so rich that I also give to others. So it's coming out of a sense of haughtiness and arrogance. That's one level of kindness. And in other words, as you give, it's recognizable, and there's a sense that you're the giver, you're on top, and you're being kind to the Rachmanis cases, to the losers, to the ones that need mercy. Then you have another person. His kindness is coming from his humility. He believes that every other person is more deserving than him. He believes that every other person comes first. Put the other one first. And he sets himself aside totally to give to others. He looks at himself as undeserving, and he looks at everyone else as much more deserving. Just to give you an example, I remember I was in Russia. I went to visit. I was sent to Russia from Zachem, an organization, in 1986. And so we used to give shiurim, and the shir would be for an hour and a half and 2 hours, and they would ask for more. So when you go to the people's houses, which is like secret, we're giving shiurim, so they always offer the person some chai, which is tea. Russians love to drink tea. So I remember I was drinking tea. One house that I went to, like in the first days that I was there, I had the audacity to ask if they had any lemon. So I had some lemon and we squeezed it into the tea. Anyways, I told my buddy, we were sent with partners, I told my chavrusa, the one who came with me, that day I had tea and I had Russian chai. The Russian tea is geschmack. It's always geschmack. They always have tea. And I told him that I took some lemon. So he says, "What do you mean you took lemon? They might be waiting online to get lemon. Lemon it's a delicacy. It's a luxury. Don't take any lemon." So then I thought he's probably right, because in those days, even in 1986, they couldn't get everything they wanted. So from then on, I didn't ask for any lemon. I just had tea, because how can I take away their lemon, even if it's just a couple of drops of squeezing, etc., etc. So the point is, there's a chesed that comes out of humility, and there's a chesed that the other person's first, no matter what, etc., etc. And this is the difference over here between, and why midah keneged midah, why the Eibishter says that the reward for what Avram said, Vanechi of Vayeira, is para aduma and the drink by the Seder. What's the law by para aduma? By para aduma we say that it says that one of the things about para aduma that we can't understand is that it's metamei esetohirim. Metamei esetohirim. Okay, you know, one second, I made a mistake. Let's first talk about Avram. So we see that Avram's chesed is coming out of a place of humility. Now this also explains over here in the story that Avram is praying for Stoim. First we see the people of Stoim have no idea that Avram is putting himself out totally to pray for them. And he's having Mesiras Nefesh. And as Rashi said before, as Avram is going to enter the dialogue, begin the dialogue with Hashem, the pasuk says, Vayigash Avram. Avram came forward after he was told that Stoim is going to be destroyed, and Rashi says something unbelievable. Vayigash Avram atzinu hagosha l'milchama. Vayigash Yoav hagosha l'piyas. Vayigash el Yehuda v'hagosha l'tfila. Vayigash Eliyahu hanavi. And Rashi says, "L'chol eile nichnas Avram l'daber koshes l'piyas u'letfila." What that means is that word Vayigash is used in three contexts. We see Vayigash when it's found in relation to war, in relation to conciliation, and in relation to prayer. And over here, when we say Vayigash Avram, Avram is going to speak to the Eibishter. It includes all three, which going to war means l'daber koshes. I want you to stop for a second and think about that. We're talking about a puny, insignificant creation, a mere mortal, Avram Avinu, who is humble, as the pasuk soon says, "Vanechi of Vayeira," and nevertheless he goes on total self-sacrifice. L'daber koshes. Could you imagine that Rashi should use? We're talking about Avram, and it's going to be recorded forever that he is now going l'daber koshes to speak harshly to Hashem. I want you to imagine a chassid talking to his Rebbe, who the Rebbe is also Ish Elikim. It's a human being. Could you imagine that what it's going to say about a certain chassid? He spoke harshly to his Rebbe because he wanted to appeal something for his fellow chassid. You'd think, no way, it's never going to happen such a thing. First of all, he's going to think to himself that the Rebbe is not kind himself. Of course he knows, and he's thinking about the good welfare for that chassid anyways. And second of all, just think about the words l'daber koshes. How could it be l'daber koshes? And here Avram Avinu, who's the epitome of kindness, benevolence, and generosity, and he is the one who's going to. He's Avram Avinu, our forefather, the one who's the ultimate, the first Yid. And we see that when it comes to saving another and to advocate for another and to speak well of another and to save another, he's ready to be l'daber koshes, to speak harshly to Hashem himself. Wow. So here we see the degree of Avram's humility. He's jeopardizing his relationship with Hashem, that now he's going to have to speak l'daber koshes for someone else. That can only come out of humility. Because here's going to be the difference if we see somebody who's doing his kindness because of his haughtiness, or they're doing his kindness because of humility. One difference is not only the feeling, the what's going, the incentive and the feeling, the temperament of the person, but it makes an afkamin l'maisa. The person who does kindness because he's king of the world and he's head of everybody, he's never going to do it in a way which he will suffer, where it actually demands a sacrifice. He only will give, like it says in Chassidus, from his shirayim, from his leftovers. When it comes easy, if you have $1 billion, you give away a bit for someone else, which is still a small pittance compared to you're still living lavishly, you're still living grandly. You give a tiny bit, teensy-weensy, to someone else. That's the kindness that comes out of haughtiness. But if we're talking about the kindness that comes out of humility, you have self-sacrifice. It's going to cost you. It's going to be painful. You give where it hurts. But still, for someone else, that person comes first. That's the difference. And we see it demonstrated in this story, where he said, that he had total self-sacrifice for another. And the same thing in the beginning of this parsha. We'll speak about it another time, where it says that we learn out from this that Hashem appeared to Avram, and he says, to hold on. And we learn out from this that treating guests is greater than speaking to Hashem himself, engaging and having a dialogue, an encounter with Hashem himself. Guest is more important. So first of all, let's start at the beginning of the story. Avram is in pain. He's in more pain that he doesn't have guests, and he can't exercise his attribute of kindness than from having a surgery without anesthetic. Avram just had the milah, and he's in great pain, there's no question about it. But what's bothering him more is the fact that he can't exercise his do-goodness attribute. He is the ultimate personification, embodiment of Hashem's chesed, a high level of kindness. And he's there recovering from his surgery, and still, and this was the day we has pain like anything, still what's bothering you even more is that he can't do chesed. So the Eibishter says, you know what, I'll send him 3 angels. And he goes to deal with these people, he doesn't know that they're angels, and we learn from this, so let's start first like we just said. Only a person whose chesed is coming out of absolute selflessness and humility would worry more about the fact that he's not doing good for others. My whole life and my whole purpose is to be selfless and to bring benefit to others. Only such a person could himself be struggling on a personal level when it comes to the basics, health, surgery, call it whatever you want, be in pain, but nevertheless overlook his pain and even be more pained by the fact that he can't help others. But if your kindness would be coming from your haughtiness, so you tell yourself, no way, I come first, and today I'm not feeling well. I'm recovering. I can't do kindness for somebody else. And then comes the next thing, that not only are you willing to sacrifice yourself physically for another, like we saw in the story of last week's Parsha, that he went out to save Lot, went to war, so he put himself physically in danger, but also, like we said, just like it says Vayigash, that he's ready to speak koshes with Hashem, that would jeopardize his whole connection to the Eibishter. The same thing over here in a way, that he's telling Hashem, hold on, there's guests, where we don't know yet that that treating guests is even greater than conversing with Hashem. So it's a risk in a way. What do you mean? You're telling Hashem, hold on? So he's, again, sacrificing himself spiritually for another person, which by a person who's a holy person, the sacrifice of spirituality is greater than the physical sacrifice. So this is what we learn, that another person, to do a favor for another person, even physically, is greater than your own spiritual levels, no matter how high, no matter how great. Now we understand, the Rebbe says, the reward, midah keneged midah, in Yiddishkeit, it's measure for measure. There's an inherent connection. The reward that the Jews, that the Yidden get, the mitzvah of Parah Adumah and the mitzvah of the Sotah drinking the water, we get that because it's the same exact thing. By Parah Adumah it says that the Kohen who was preparing this solution, the fire, you have to burn the cow and then they mix the water and the ashes together. And this is one of the wonders, the befuddlement, the riddle, the question about Parah Adumah, which makes it something that's hard to understand. That it says that it's metayir es hatmeim umetame es hatahirim, that it made pure the one who was impure, but it made impure the one who was pure. The kohanim that prepared this solution, they became impure, and it purified. And who did it purify? It purified the lowest level, somebody who's a tumas mess. He has the worst contamination. And still the lesson is, the Kohen has to go on self-sacrifice like Avram, spiritual self-sacrifice. He becomes contaminated, impure, to bring purity to another person. And I forgot to mention one more thing, that Rashi says that he told them to wash their feet. And why did he tell the angels to wash their feet? He didn't know the angels, because he thought that what does Rashi say on the words V'rachzu raglechem, wash your feet, Kesav Shem Avim? He thought that these were wilderness dwellers, Shemishtachvim la'avak ragleim, who bow and worship to the dust of the feet. And the hikpid, Avram was always careful, Shalei la'achnas havidazon lebeisei, to bring idolatry into his house. So therefore, Avram thought that these people were idol worshippers. So again, to the lowest sort of people that were idol worshippers, that he had to make sure he asked them to wash their feet. He put himself aside and he went and served them instead of dialoguing with Hashem to do kindness for another. Even though they might be idol worshippers, but they need food, they need drink, they need shade. I'm there for them. Same thing over here, going back to Parah Adumah, the one who's in the lowest level, similar to the idol worshippers, the one who was being contaminated with the tumas mess, the highest level of impurity, the Kohen has to go on self-sacrifice for him. And the same thing we find concerning Sotah. Hashem himself said that his name is erased. You have to write his name on a parchment, a specific verse, and then you put that parchment in water mixed with the dust. That's the dust, ashes and dust, and his name becomes dissolved. And this is unbelievable, astonishing, and mind-boggling, that Hashem's name, Hashem himself, so to speak, goes on a sacrifice to help bring harmony and peace to a Jewish couple. So Hashem rewarded us that this should be given over to Avram and Lebnei Machrei Matzev Kol HaDoros, that the whole point of Yiddishkeit is built on an Avram Avinu, and this is passed on for generation and included this concept in these two mitzvahs, that we always put ourselves aside and the other one comes first, and that's what Jewish kindness is all about, and that's the beauty of the Jewish nation, There's also actually another place where this pasuk is brought down. I'm sure I mentioned it before because I just love it. I think one of the most chassidish Rashis of all the Chumash is where the pasuk says, Hashem says, "Lo merubchem mikol ha'amim chashek Hashem bechem." Not because you're the many that Hashem choose you. No, ki atam ma'at mikol ha'am. So the simple meaning of the pasuk is, Hashem didn't choose. You can't say Hashem chose us because we are great in numbers. Because quantity, because the fact is that we're a minority. But Rashi says, ki atamamat is a reason why he chose us. We are the minority, means we make ourselves small. See that Rashi over there, it is so unbelievable. Rashi says, atamamat, you are the ones who belittle yourselves. You are the least, you are the minority. It means you belittle yourselves. Like Avram, who said, he brings down these words, I am but dust and ash. And then he brings see there, but then he says, and Sancherev, see the Rashi. So over there, Rashi brings such a contrast, similar to what the Alter Rebbe wrote in Igeres HaKodesh, Simen Beis. We see in the Goyish world, the more a person becomes successful, the greater he becomes, the more he starts believing in himself. It's about me. And we see this in the olden days with the emperors, with the kings, with the Caesars. You know, they start as a general, they're very successful, they win many wars and battles and campaigns, and then they become a governor, and then they become a emperor, and they start with stamps, and then with coins, and then with busts, and then they deify themselves. Who knows? So, in other words, it's like the contrast is amazing. In the secular world, according to the measure of your success, and according to the measure of your advancement and going higher, you actually consider yourself more and more on top of the world. And you become bigger, your ego becomes bigger, your arrogance becomes bigger, your haughtiness becomes bigger, in exact measurements commensurate with your success. And by Yiddishkeit, we see the opposite. In direct measure of your success and your greatness, you become more humble. And that's the sign of a true great person and a true leader. And this is the connection when I said in the year 2024, we see in the latest election that happened in the United States, I'm not going to get into it, I don't understand these things too much. But the discussion by many people is about the elite. The elite people are not identifying with the common people. But they preach, the talk that they talk is one of, it's called, people are calling it virtue signaling. They're looking out for the other person, they're caring for the other person. It's baloney. They're just speaking like that. But everyone is saying that they talk in such a way like they're better than thou. They talk in such a way which is condescending. And they talk in such a way that they are the elite. They're better because they care. Exactly as the Rebbe explains in the Sikha. They're doing kindness because they're a better person. And in the end, they're not really identifying with your needs at all. They don't have any true empathy, because to have true empathy, which really what empathy means, you have to have humility. And that it's only a kindness that comes from Avram Avinu that's able to put himself in the other person's shoes completely and give to the other person. So Chav Cheshvan is the Yom Hailedes of the Rebbe Rashab. Everyone knows the famous story where he was just a child, and it's a story that there was a tailor who was making a dress for the Rebbe Rashab's mother when he was a child, and this tailor had pocketed the leftover material to himself, which wasn't such an ethical or moral thing to do. So he told his mother about it afterwards, and he was like just a small child, and he noticed that he was like 4 or 5 years old. But then he felt very bad that he had told his mother about this thing, so he went to ask his father for a tikkun, that he caused another person pain, because in the end his mother asked the tailor about it, and the tailor turned red and he was embarrassed. To make a long story short, he went to his father. He's a kid. The Rebbe Rashab was like 4 or 5 years old, and he's asking a tikkun, like for he did something wrong, he felt bad that he caused pain for another person. Anyways, when his father asked him what did you do wrong, so he said, it's bad enough that I caused another person pain. He didn't want to tell him the story. Now I should also talk lashon hara. The point of the story is that the Rebbe Rashab was super sensitive to another person. He was tzibrochen. He was totally crushed that he caused pain to another person, even though that person did something wrong. But the takeaway for him was that he caused another person to not feel so good. And that crushed him completely, etc., etc. That's the Rebbe Rashab. Concerning my mashpir of Meil Tzibul, whose yahrzeit is this Yutes Cheshvan, one thing that makes him outstanding, and I have no other mashpia that was like this, when it came to Farbrengen with the Bachram, there's some photos you could see, there's no other mashpia that you see that he embraces the Bachram by the Farbrengens. He mamish danced with them, danced on the table, made kula, a somersault, and it's amazing how he just hugged and embraced the Bachram by these Farbrengens, and how he got involved totally like one of the boys. He's Farbrengen with kids that are 17 years old, and he's 40, 50, and he's one of the greatest scholars that lived in the last generation, and I'm not joking. I believe he knew more Torah than anybody else that I know, because he knew Nigla and Chassidus. So the great leaders of the yeshiva world, they know a lot of Nigla, the revealed part of Torah, Gemara, and the great scholars of the Chassidic world of Kabbalah and mysticism, they know a lot of Chassidus. But I don't know anyone else who was proficient and a bucky. He was an expert in all areas of Torah. He knew everything. You could ask him anything in any area of Torah, and he knew it. And I can't think of another person that knew so much Torah like him. He had a photographic memory. So here's a person who's a real giant scholar. And nevertheless, he was beslapshus. He's totally getting involved and dancing and embracing and singing as one of the teenage boys of 17 years old, as any other teenager student. That's how old we were in Morristown, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, 20. And obviously, this is what comes from humility. He would take l'chaim, he would drink l'chaim. Usually he was more reserved. But nevertheless, I can't think of any other mashpiyim that I even know about. There's not one other mashpiyah that I can remember, not mine, and I can't even think of anyone else to that degree that would get so involved with the dancing and with the singing and smiling and embracing and showing such warmth during Farbrengens in such a way. And obviously it comes from humility. So here's Rabbi Meil Tzibul, who's number one giant scholar in mysticism and in Talmud, the top level. And nevertheless, when you have humility, you just get involved with everyone equally, like you're one of the chavre, one of the students. You understand? So this is amazing. We'll finish with a very, very famous quote from one of the Likutei Yidden. I forgot which Rebbe said this, but he said that a Jew has to have two pockets. In one pocket, he has to have the verse, the quote that Avram Avinu said, "V'anoichi ofor ve'efer, I am but dust and ashes." And another pocket, he has to have a piece of paper which says, "B'shvili nivra elam." For me, the world was created. So in other words, and he said, when a person is feeling haughty, and he's getting, letting his success get to his head or whatever it is, he has to put his hand in his pocket and look at that piece of paper that says, "V'anoichi ofer ve'efer." Avram Avinu, who's the first Jew, he set the standard that we have this level of humility. This is what a Jew is. That's why Hashem chose us, because we have humility. But when you're feeling down and out and crushed, you have to take out that piece of paper and say, "B'shvili nivro elam." The entire world and everything in it was created for my benefit. Till you matter. So this is what Yiddishkeit is about. We should have this balance together, and the Eibusher should help, that we should just develop this attribute of humility more and more, and there's no question about it. It's not spoken about enough. And there's no question about it that through this humility, as we see by Avraham Avinu, the more humility, the more chesed. The more chesed, the more achdus. U'borcheinu avinu kulonu ke'echad. The more achdus we have, this will be the vehicle to bring Mashiach. Begula mitzvah shleima, take of me ad mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.